Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
Oh.
And Travis.
Hello, everyone.
And we are getting together tonight to talk about Robert Frost's poem, Into My Own. Before we get to that, I did want to mention, if you like my channel, you like my work, you want to help support it, you can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great and sign up to be a monthly supporter. And I did want to say thank you to my current supporters. That is Ann H and RG. And I feel like there was something else I wanted to mention there, but I don't know. So, I suppose it'll, I hope it'll come back to me. But, having said all of that, Travis has volunteered to read the poem for us tonight. So, I'm gonna get that up on the screen, and we will... Oh, wait. Sorry, one moment. Need to sort something out. Close that. There we go. And I'm going to get that up on the screen. And let me know when you guys see it.
Yep, I see it.
Okay, go for it.
All right, Into My Own by Robert Frost. One of my wishes is that those dark trees, so old and firm they scarcely show the breeze, were not, as 'twere, the merest mask of gloom, but stretched away unto the edge of doom. I should not be withheld, but that they, some day, into their vastness I should steal away, fearless of ever finding open land, or highway where the slow wheel pours the sand. I do not see why I should e'er turn back, or those should not set forth upon my track to overtake me, who should miss me here, and long to know if still I held them dear. They would not find me changed from him they knew, only more sure of all I thought was true.
Okay, thank you. And, Nate, would you like to kick us off with your first thoughts on this one?
Absolutely. I feel like it's this attitude that really drove Manifest Destiny. It's this whole thing that there is all of that out there that I want to go and see. I want to just, and I mean, come on, tell me any man out there who hasn't looked around and been like, you know what, just disappearing into the forest for a while and living like a wild man, just living by my wits in the fat of the land. Everyone's had that thought, right? Unless too many of you have become domesticated. But anyway, just it's one of the things I liked about particularly Louis L'Amour's Sackett series, the early ones, when it's still like sort of pre-colonial America, where it's like, yeah, they talk about, it's like, yeah, we live in this, massive forest on the coast of this vast dark continent that we don't really know that much about. And they talk about how much they can't wait to cross over the mountains and see what's on the other side. And somebody's like, probably just more mountains. Who cares? And he's like, well, yeah, but that's great, because then I get to cross those mountains and see what's on the other side of those. And so it's just, I love this. It's an older spirit of America, I think. Just, you know what? I'm just going to leave everything behind, head off into the unknown, and if you care about me and you want to know, follow me, find me. I'll still love you. We will still be, whatever we were. I'll still be who I was. But now that I've got the assurance of knowing that I can do these things and the quiet to really consider my beliefs, I'll probably have just deepened in them. And I said, that's awesome. We should all have some primordial forests to just kind of dive into and, come back with just a little bit of the fae behind our eyes.
It's it's also interesting because, like, this is Robert Frost, early, 20th century America, and, he's looking at where he is, and he doesn't have, apparently, nowhere near him, he doesn't have this, like, deep forest that you could, seriously imagine just disappearing into. It's like, man, there's a few trees over there. It would be really cool if there was this, vast, extensive forest behind them. And so, like, looking at where he starts, it's like, from where he is, that isn't even really an option, which is, kind of, you could say, kind of sad for him, I guess.
Yeah, but I wonder, I mean, there is the actual like tree forest thing happening, but I wonder if it's not a bit metaphorical as well. I found his choice of words of gloom and doom interesting. That these trees were a source of gloom, which, a thick forest, it is dark, which technically is definition of gloom. But we give it sort of I don't know, we give it another sense. Like gloom, it's sort of this sense of pondering and depression. Actually, I looked it up, and that is one of the definitions of gloom, I guess, is a kind of depression, emotional. And so if you look at it with that in mind, it's interesting that he's saying, give me a gloom, a depression, a hard thing, basically. Let's say a hard thing that takes me to the edge of disaster, because that's basically what doom is. And I think that's a very interesting wish to have, to have something ponderous and weighty that takes you up to the edge of doom.
Well, and it's also, kind of another way to look at that might be, I want, to the edge of doom, and that, might be, kind of being tested, being, how far can I go? How hard can I strive, to if I were to, disappear into a place like this, like, how hard would it be for me, and what would come through on the other side, if I'm making sense?
No, I think that makes sense.
And that's kind of what I was thinking, is that, men thrive on challenges. And, if we, nature is the most dispassionate challenger of all. It's like, I don't care. You can be the most beautiful, the wisest, the whateverest, and I'll kill you just the same. If you can't hack it out here, I'm going to turn you into mushrooms, bud.
Right.
And so, like I said, I actually like that reading. It's kind of like, this dark weightiness, and it's, portent, and yeah, take you right up to the edge of disaster, past it, and into the afterlife if you're not careful. But I think that's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. Anytime I get out in the woods, like, I like, feel myself start turning into a panther. I'm kind of like, yeah, sneaky. Let's see what's around. It's like, is somebody watching me? Better not be. I'm an apex predator, son. I gotta do this thing. It's like, what do you want? You coyotes want to fight? I got a stick and a hand and a couple of feet. I got more bite force than you do. You wouldn't expect it, though. Let's do this. You a bear? Let's not do this thing. Maybe I'm gonna go home now.
And
yeah,
I
I really like that reading, Travis, because it rings true.
Yeah, and to follow on that, I should not be withheld, but that someday into their vastness I should steal away. So even, facing this gloom, recognizing, a gloom, a challenge, a dark space, It's like he's saying it's inevitable. It's like you're saying it's this thing that I am inevitably drawn to. I will go there. And then he goes, fearless of ever finding open land or highway where the slow wheel pours the sand. And every time I read that, I feel like it is a reference to time, like sort of the wheel of time or history and sand pouring through an hourglass, which gives
I
it
didn't
this
know.
interesting context as well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the slow wheel pours the sand. Like,
Wagons.
is he talking?
Right,
What's
like
that?
a wagon wheel.
Wagons.
Okay, what does pouring sand have to do with it?
As they roll along, they kind of sink in. These aren't like asphalt highways. These are basically just open, packed down spots.
Sandy path.
Dust and sand and stuff would fall onto the sort of interior surface of the wheel, and as it lifts up, it would sort of pour it off.
Oh, okay, all right.
So it has a very literal, it has a literal application of wagon wheels going along these old roads. But it also, I like Travis's reading where it's talking about, this is also possibly a metaphor for, the passage of time. And I don't want to, he was born in 1874.
74.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Sorry.
He was born in the late 1800s, and so between then and 1963, we went from steam engines being kind of like, oh golly gee, that's pretty great, to nuclear weapons and space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an unbelievable change in the world and society between the time that man was born and the time he finally died. And I can very much understand him wanting to, not be brought face to face with the consequences of all that time passage, wanting to slip back into the older, more familiar things.
Well, and it's also like let's see, look at that. Let me look at that stanza. It's the particular language he used there. I should not be withheld, which implies, by the way, that he kind of expects someone. He kind of expects there to be someone who's like, no, don't do that. No, stay here. We've got this nice little patch here. You're not going out there. And he says, I should not be withheld, but that someday into their vastness I should steal away. And he doesn't say I should run away or I should leave. Again, if you assume he's choosing his words carefully, and that's basically the definition of a good writer in any case, and definitely of a good poet. I should steal away, and it's again the idea that there's something illicit or at least disapproved of about the idea of him disappearing, and because society and the settled civilization doesn't want men to run off like that, which has bonuses, but it is restraining. It does also restrain a real impulse in a lot of men, and so you would assume that impulse is there for a reason, so it has bonus. Society that in that aspect has bonuses and presumably has drawbacks as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it is that impulse, toward the unknown and toward exploration and adventure and that just curiosity, that causes major changes in life. I mean, like civilization level changes. I mean, yeah, sometimes there's other motives, but I go back to him like he's my favorite author. But one thing is Lamore talks about is like, there's all these great migrations that happen, but usually they're started off by a few guys just sort of wander off into the woods and come back like, hey, did y'all know that over there's something really cool? Everybody's like, really? And a few other people are like, I want to go see the cool thing. And then people start wandering off into the woods. And then eventually people bring their families into the woods. And after that, the whole civilization is moving. And usually they figure out the reason later. Historians will be like, oh, yeah, looking back on it, it was because of these pressures and this, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, it was just, I want to go that way. That way seems nice. Gonna do that now. Bye. And so, it is very easy to turn your whole life into, living in your comfy little hobbit hole and, never being willing to risk, the sort of dishonor of being one to partake in adventures.
We want no adventures here. Thank you.
Like, I don't know. And honestly, yeah, there is a lot of disapproval about making a big change and doing all this stuff. My in-laws are a good example of that. They have not approved of a lot of decisions I've made since I married their daughter. But luckily, that
not getting into that.
Luckily, that daughter that I married has always been ready to go on the adventure with me, and I am so blessed for that because I don't have to steal away. I'm like, hon, go ahead and go ahead and close up the shutters and pack the wagon. Going a little further west. I heard there's another river from here, so we're gonna go, try and build on the banks of that one now. And yeah, I have had some interesting times, but I've never felt like I have been. I have forced myself to be less than I am. I've always been able to kind of just do what I felt needed to be done without having to worry too much about whether or not she's coming along. How far behind me will she be trailing after I head off into the woods? It turns out about a step and a half.
So this poem actually, I hadn't thought about this until we had started talking, but actually reminds me a little bit of another poem I did a good while ago. And I don't think we had a discussion for, which is Sea Fever by John Masefield, which is a little bit the same thing, except instead of disappearing into the woods, he's like, I gotta go down to the ocean. We gotta go sailing. I don't necessarily want to, but I kind of have to. And
Hell.
Yeah, there are any number of those yearnings, that men have, whether it's the woods, the desert, the mountains, the sea, or starting a business, or any number of ventures that we can pursue and start down a track where there is no path or no known path, or you can only see about 2 steps ahead of you, and yeah.
It occurs to me, I think I might. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, they try and teach that out of you. Like, that's irresponsible. You need to do this and that. I'm like, look, guys, I was not made to live in a widget factory. I was not made to stand in one place and do one thing forever. Said, it's like I'm not gonna say I was built different. It's just that nobody was allowed to modify me. I was built the same. I had same sort of basic archetype that built civilization. I'm a guy who wants to do better for my mate and my progeny, and I'm willing to do what it takes to do that. And oftentimes that's making a change.
It is kind of funny, we got these two here. It occurs to me that like I might have enough where I could like start a little playlist, poems of Wanderlust. I know of at least one more that would fit in there, but I was thinking about it, and like the oldest surviving story that we have a significant part of it is kind of the opposite, or at least I think it's the oldest. Maybe I'm wrong, but like the Epic of Gilgamesh, I think is the oldest surviving story we have, and a significant part of that is like Gilgamesh goes out and basically drags back this wild man and manages to get him into civilization and a part of civilization. Um, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of interesting seeing like the same like the reverse the polarity on the same idea. And it's and how that plays out in different circumstances.
Well, it's a different balance. Back then, most places were wild and civilization was small and new. Civilization these days has got to the point where it's so freaking oppressive that Taliban fighters would rather be hiding in the hills getting bombed by F-16s than work office jobs.
Yeah, it kind of makes you want to, run out into the hills of Montana and build a cabin and start mailing out letter bombs to professors.
But it is, I mean...
Travis is like, I am not connected with that statement!
These guys are crazy. I'm young and have things to lose.
Yes, it's a nice reference to Kaczynski.
Good old Uncle Ted. He makes more and more sense every year. And I'm like, Ted Kaczynski and Alex Jones, two pariahs who are just, the mill is grinding very fine for them indeed.
But I think on that note, like, the effort to civilize, is a dark forest as well. Like, that's a path. If you decide that you're going to create something of structure or civilization, I mean, even building a house, building a cabin in the woods, I mean, that is an effort, fraught with challenges. So, I mean, the story you're telling about Gilgamesh bringing this guy back and civilizing him, like, that's a pretty unknown path if you try to tame, something wild. I don't know. Chaos is it's one big forest for sure. Hard to tame.
I'm pretty sure that the was it Enkidu? Was that the name of the other guy?
Yeah.
But I'm if I recall correctly, the part of the civilizing process was getting him a girl. So
that's a big part of the process.
That is a big part, I'd say.
But honestly, though, I think the best outcome of a poem like this, like, it points toward my favorite sort of archetypal character, which is the ranger. Right? Just this guy who goes out into the wilderness and keeps watch. Like, I see in my head, like, an older Aragorn, like, kind of standing there looking out and being like, I have this crown on, but what I really want to have on is my old raggedy cloak, and follow a bunch of little short dudes into the prancing pony. Like, that's what I want to be doing right now. That was when times were simpler and more immediate. There was a mission. And like I said, I just love that. It's living by your wits and your skill and all of that stuff. And just also, not gonna lie, I just love being in the woods. I was in Virginia, went deer hunting one morning. And I'm here to tell you, like, I rock up to the little parking spot in this the sort of national wildlife refuge. And there's a bunch of dudes like getting dogs ready. There's like 25 people over there. I just kind of rock up in my Focus, jump out, sling some shells in my 12 gauge, and went off into the bushes. And they're like, what? Who's that guy? And I'm like, Aragorn, son of Arathorn. No, just rock off in there, and I'm sitting there, and it is like 8 degrees. But I'm like, I don't feel that bad because I'm here breathing the fresh air. I'm looking at this seep right here where this little gully kind of comes down. I'm hoping something quadrupedal runs over that way, and pauses for a drink so I can crank it with a slug. And I'm just like, this is awesome. Then and it's dark. I'm just kind of watching it, and then all of a sudden, just like the sunlight, like the sunrise breaks, and everything like visibly brightens. And it kind of goes from being like shadows and all that to being just sort of like these gray shapes and mist, and then the treetops are orange. And I was like, yeah, you need time in the woods. It is good for the soul. It's one of the most refreshing and beautiful things I've seen pretty much in my life. And this poem puts me in mind of it. It puts me in mind of these wilderness faring characters that I always admired. And yeah, I just got to reiterate that I fully understand the sentiment of this poem because I share it so strong.
Yeah, and in my own recent experience, like I like to go biking, live in a relatively small town, and I've gone bicycling on all of the roads out around. Hello, am I here?
You're
Did
here.
I cut out for a
I
second?
hear you.
Oh, you're good.
Nope,
Okay,
you're
sorry. Okay. But I'll go biking on all the roads around this area. Gone biking all the roads around this area. Not that long ago, I found like a path. I'm like, oh hey, I can build a loop out of that, and I started going on this different track, and I found a part where there's about 2 miles of this stretch of road where all you see is the road and power lines and trees. Like not even open fields, which there's plenty of that around here, but like actual just solid forest for about 2 miles, and that has become one of my favorite things to go through because it's hard to explain, but it's just like I don't know, like you breathe a little bit easier. It's a little bit you feel a little bit freer. If like that's all you can see. And yeah, it's not exactly what he's talking about because I am on the highway when I'm doing this, but it is at least a little touch of what Frost is talking about here.
I think it's. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Travis.
Oh. I think it's interesting, when you stumble out into a vastness like this. Basically, you're lost. There is no path. There is no highway, with wheels. You're just out there, and I think it's interesting that when you put yourself in that scenario, I mean, being lost. Well, if you're lost long enough, you start to get your bearings. I guess is what I would say.
Or you die, one or the other.
Or you die, one or the other. But I think it's like like Nate was saying, these early settlers, they just went. They didn't know. Maybe they followed a river, and then they said, "Oh, we'll go this direction." They found another river, and so then they have a reference between the two rivers, or they float down the one river and they end up in another river, and they're like, "Oh," and you get these reference points. And so I think, anytime you set out on a venture where it is unknown, we're basically talking about the unknown. You can't be anything but lost because you have no reference point for what is, basically. Because you just left what you knew. You just left this little town, what you knew is civilization. And so now everything is an unknown. But I do recommend it to learn a city. Put your map away, wander around, get lost, and then pull the map out and find your way home. You learn a place rather quickly that way.
It is, yeah, and it is. I think, especially for people who grew up with it, like, okay, my age. I know I don't look that old, but like my age, I was around a good bit, and I was navigating the world basically on my own for several years before smartphones were, everywhere. Um, but like, people who grew up, more recently, where that's basically in their hands from, from childhood or from adolescence, like it's kind of hard to imagine how different the world looks to them and to us and to, people 100 years ago, where like, and like 100 years ago is actually, pretty well explored still, but like at the same time you wouldn't have to go far to end up somewhere where it's like, okay, where are we, where am I, how do I get back home? Whereas, today, like I said, if, the system is, basically functioning, for most people, that's just not a thing that's going to happen.
But the thing is, those people don't realize that they are actually lost. They have a device telling them where to go, but they are lost. They have no idea where they've been or what they've been doing. They're relying and looking at the device. And I hate the maps applications. I mean, I use them because they are convenient when you want turn-by-turn directions to get to someplace. But they're miserable if you're trying to get a bird's-eye perspective on where things are and how they connect.
Well, and, you can look at this in a lot of ways. I think, you can see this in a lot of areas. I think there's a lot of ways, a lot of things you could point to and say, yeah, convenience is kind of the devil. Convenience is, something that will, drag you down and, kind of make you less than what you should be. Fast food is convenient. Television is convenient if you're bored. And there's a lot of things you could think of that are convenient that, if you don't, that if you're not very careful, can drag you down really quick.
No, convenience weakens you, and it cheapens whatever it gives you.
So, which is why I make my life as inconvenient as possible, and I put everything on like way high up shelves, and like Daddy, why can't I reach my food? I'm making you stronger.
Well, it's a secondhand lines moment. It's like, look, kid, we're both old, about to die any time. Like, so you need anything, find it yourself. Or better yet, learn to do without. It's like, that's actually really, really great advice. Watched that movie the other day with Rachel and the kids, and we're just like, God, this is the best movie Western cinema has ever made.
What's the movie?
Secondhand Lions.
Oh, yeah, that is a great one. I should rewatch that sometime.
Freaking classic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
All
but
right.
is it any good? But is it any good for making memes? That is a primary component to me whenever I watch any movies these days.
I am certain you can drag some really good meme templates out of this. 100% sure.
So let's see. We talked about the first stanza and the second stanza. I guess we didn't really talk about the structure of this, because this is a to get back to the poem, as we say, Into My Own is a sonnet. Although it's not is not either Shakespearean or Petrarchan, really. It's 14 lines, structured in 4, 4, and 3, 4, 4, 4, and 2. So it's almost a Shakespearean sonnet, but it has the rhymes back to back instead of scattered, instead of alternating. But anyway, we talked about stanzas 1 and 2. And his wish to go to the trees, and like the implication of his choice of words. And then we talked about
over, kind of brushed into the third. And it's not that I like that the third stanza is there, because it's not like he's saying, I want to run away and abandon all this. It's kind of like, I want to go forth and see what follows. Who comes after me? Who actually, to whom do I mean enough to also uproot and come along? And so I'm like, that actually is wonderful, because it goes to show that, there are those that are going to understand, and there are those that are going to want to come along with you. And so, sometimes taking these chances means losing a lot of people, but you keep the ones that matter.
Well, that's where is that? Let me see if I can pull that up quick. Kind of John chapter, is it John chapter 6? Gospel of John chapter 6. Where is it? On hearing it, many of the disciples said, this is a hard teaching. Who can accept it? Skipping a moment. From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. You do not want to leave too, do you? Jesus asked the 12. And Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And it's like, you're getting a lot, you're going to lose a lot of people, but, you're going to find out who's really with you, which can be valuable. But yeah, really, it's, go ahead.
It is a comfort, I find, sort of, it's kind of like, oh yeah, old so-and-so, ain't heard from him in a while. But then I look over and I'm like, and here's here's the dude that's been my friend for 25 years through the dumbest crap.
And it
shows,
and it's, well, and it's also, like you were saying, he's not saying like, I hate everyone, I'm going to disappear. He's like, look, I gotta go do this thing. If you're into it, come along. And it is a it's not, this kind of misanthropic, like, I hate all of you. And so it is, that's the word. It's almost like stoic. It's almost like a stoic philosopher. He's like, I'm happy to have you, but I am sufficient in myself. If you aren't here, I'm going to find a way. Which again is a valuable perspective to cultivate if you can manage it.
It's something I've talked to my wife about a lot. I say a lot. It's come up a few times. At which point I talked a lot. But is this idea that I was like, it's like, look, I'm not going to go around saying, oh, I couldn't live without you. I was like, I could very well survive if something happened to you and you were gone. But every single thing would be diminished. Yeah, it's like, I'm not just going to flop over and die because something happened to you. At the same time, I'm going to feel your absence every moment of every day. And that's the kind of thing. It's actually another Robert Frost poem that got pulled up here. It's called The Pasture. You'll give me a minute. I kind of feel like it leads into this, because it gets the idea. Because I'm going out to clean the pasture spring. I'll only stop to rake the leaves away, and watch the water clear, I may. I shan't be gone long. You come too. I'm going out to fetch the little calf that's standing by the mother. It's so young. It totters when she licks it with her tongue. I shan't be gone long. You come too. And it's just I got stuff to do. I can handle it all by myself. I want you. You know, it'll be better if you're there, not because you're going to make it easier, not because I want to exploit you, or even that your presence is required. It's that you make the little things better, you make the big things bearable. You come to.
So I will argue from the nature of the poem, from my own perspective. I mean, he's saying, "Or those should not set forth upon my tracks or overtake me, who should miss me here." But I argue that if you're going to go out into the gloom, it is better to do it alone. I personally prefer traveling alone, because then I don't have to worry about anybody else's feelings or thoughts or fears or inhibitions or laziness or inability to go without water for 2 days or whatever it may be. I only have to deal with my own inadequacies. So that is my preference when traveling. It really, now I've had some good travel partners, but I still prefer traveling alone.
You're a very common Western stereotype, and the problem is you're going to run into a wagon train that needs your help, and some pretty freckled redheaded gal with bright green eyes is just going to act like she doesn't have the time of day for you, but you are going to fall madly in love, and suddenly you're going to be standing there on your farm like, how did this happen?
Well, I look forward to meeting her.
Change your whole life.
So what was something else I had there and I kind of lost it. That's okay. Yeah,
so
and
I will
also
say, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go.
I was gonna say, so with the last stanza, they would They would not find me changed from him they knew, only more sure of all I thought was true. I mean, it kind of ties together this idea. I mean, you imagine a young man who's leaving home, going off to find his way, and if he finds his way back or they follow him, it's saying he's not changed from whom they knew. I would argue that's true, but I think in some ways, once you've gone and done your own thing and left, the civilization that made you, I don't know. I guess for me, the thing that caused me to go out into the world, it was a very strong thing in me that maybe most people didn't even recognize, or if they did, it was only to a certain degree. Whereas everyone used to ask me, when are you going to settle down? Now they just ask me how long I'm in town. They got trained up to the idea. But it's true. I think when you go into the gloom, this is back to the lost idea, like finding yourself by getting lost. Like, you do become more sure of who you are. You do find, you find the essence of who you are better than you ever realize, because you're out there being forced to, use skills, learn skills, to grow in order to survive in that unknown gloom.
Well, and it's it also doesn't necessarily have to be just physical, actually going into a new place. I mean, there's also exploring, finding your way through ideas that a lot of people aren't talking about today. Finding your way through ideas that a lot of people will be like, hey, we don't want to think about that. Please stay back from that. And being willing to push through and see and test it for yourself and see what's good there. Like, if you're not pushing, if you never push the boundaries in any sense, like you're never going, if you never, if you're never out on your own in some sense, if you're never out beyond the safe bounds, then yeah, you'll never find out what you can do, what you can't. You'll never find out what your real capabilities are. Which it's what is that? There's let me see if I can find that. Where is that? There's kind of related. It's a quote from Socrates, actually as passed on to us by Xenophon. But he says, "It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable." And it's a shame to never test yourself, never push yourself to see what you can do, and that's physically or like I said, intellectually. And I think we are not exactly obligated to, but I think it's something we should strive for. What am I actually capable of? What's my I ran cross country in high school. Personal best. What's your personal best? And one nice thing about one positive thing about that as a sport is it's you are competing with other people, but also in some sense you're really competing against yourself. Can I do better than last time? And pushing your limits. So I'm rambling.
I think the whole mental aspect is important, and it's a reasonable thing. But honestly, I think physical isolation is also nice. We spend way too much time around other people. Sometimes you need to be able to just be by yourself and be like, because it's that point that you're going to start thinking about yourself earnestly, like, huh, I don't like this about myself, or maybe that's a virtue I didn't realize I had, or ooh, that's a thorny implication of something I think I believe, or oh wow, I believe a thing. If you're a particularly modern person, like, oh man, I have a strong feeling about this. Might even be beliefs. And then you can kind of try and hash it out and work on it, and mutter and decry like a madman without having to worry about it, and you can be honest. And so it's nice. Yeah, I think, like I said, actual isolation where it's just you and the whole nothing else, maybe a bird, that kind of stuff is extremely useful.
Your dog would be good for those as well.
Dog is very good
if
for
you
those,
have one,
because they'll kind of go roof, and you're like, that's a very good point, Bishop. Like, I hadn't thought of it that way, but when you bore from that fashion, I know you're it's like you really challenge the implications of what I was thinking about here. How do you treat the man you know deserves death but who is truly repentant?
There's a
question.
Well, sorry, it's kind of funny to me because I actually have in the story I'm writing, the one character was just like kind of thinking through what he's been doing and what he's planning, and like he's out by himself, kind of in the back country, and he's like, I should get a dog. He's like, dang it, I'm traveling too much right now. Once I'm done with all this, I need to get a dog. So I think we've covered this one pretty well. So Nate, you started. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to put in on this one tonight?
I need to go walk fishing on a nice little sandy creek somewhere.
Okay, and Travis, how about you? Anything else for you tonight?
No, I think we pretty well covered it.
Okay.
Actually, I do have more to say. I want to encourage anybody listening, don't be afraid to get lost. Because I remember when I was working a turnaround at a local plant, a guy asked me what I'd been doing for a living, and I told him the long list of things, and he looked at me and said, "Well, you're lost as words, aren't you?" And I said, I kind of thought for a minute, I was like, I guess so, in a sense, because I mean, I know for a fact that you're standing here in this plant in your mid-20s. You've been doing this for 4 or 5 years already, and you're gonna do this until it either kills you or you're unable to do it anymore. Decades down the line. And so to you, I must seem like a madman. But at the same time, I know that my life, my experiences and the things I've done and the choices I've made have shaped me into the kind of person who has the thoughts that you would never, ever contemplate. It's given me a depth of experience, a breadth of experience, and a depth of knowledge of myself that I don't think most people ever have. And so, yeah, I'm lost as fornication. Sure, in a career sense. But I found a lot of treasure along my road.
All that is gold is not.
Yeah. And heck, not everything that's valuable is golden. Some things are made out of copper and lead. Some things are made of iron. Some things are made of wood. You never know. But
Not all who wander are lost.
The driftwood crutch that gets you down a rough road is more valuable than the gold nugget that weighs your pants down. So what I said, don't be afraid to be lost. Don't be afraid to just take the left turn off the beaten track and be like, yeah, you know what? I want to go that way. I heard there's something neat over there. My ancestor said that if I head to the sunset, there's a land out there that'll be mine. And there are sights that no one I've ever known has seen. There are opportunities and dangers. There are windfalls and pitfalls waiting for me. And I want to see them all. And I want to know that when I finally get where I'm going, that I arrive fully developed and fully myself. And
go for it.
So by all means, get free lost and find somebody to be lost with you.
When you were speaking there, it made me think of a story. This just happened to a friend of mine. She had the opportunity to go back to school, get a master's, do it in Ireland, international studies of some sort. And she had been in the Peace Corps, and she's done a few things, but still, she's used to doing it sort of organized, and things weren't coming together. And I was like, you just need to go. You just need to go there, put yourself out there, like basically throw yourself out into that gloom of the unknown, go over there, figure it out. And I guess she got a little bit more certainty, whatever, but she did. She ended up going. The person that she was supposed to live with, that whole thing fell apart and the pipes broke and she was homeless basically for 2 days. And then she found this great, cheap, housing. And it's like everything's coming together now. So I guess along with what you said about don't be afraid to get lost, it will be painful and things will fall apart. And that's what I told her when she was in the middle of it. I was like, this is the great mythical story. You have to have that wilderness experience before the good thing can happen. And I don't understand why that works, but it does seem to be consistent when you put yourself out there.
You shake loose a lot of unnecessary things. You streamline. It's like, okay, turns out that's not actually that important. it turns out that this thing that I hadn't valued quite so highly is vital. You learn what the core is, and then you actually can improve on it. And like I said, you just kind of blow apart all the all the candies, all the sort of candy structures that you've gunked onto things. And yeah, it lightens you. It lightens your soul because you lose a lot of stupid burdens and you figure out what you really need to carry.
Okay. So, having said all of that, I think it's a good time to close out. Thank you both for joining me. Anyone still listening, thank you for joining us for the show tonight, and God be with you.
Also with you.